and it's now streaming on YouTube as well.
Okay. Well, welcome to the August board meeting, our first meeting back from being virtual of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Thank you all for being here. Our agenda today includes the review of 2 proposed labor agreements involving the district. These 2 proposed contracts are between the Buffalo Association of Substitute Administrators and the Transportation Aides of Buffalo, both with the school district. Additionally, the Governance Committee met earlier today and recommended the full board approve various BFSA policies, procedures, and annual reports. I'd like to bring to your attention 2 items that have been provided to you for your completion. The first is the annual certification regarding your compliance with the Code of Ethics. Please sign that and bring it back. And the other is the board self-evaluation that we must conduct annually. And you don't have to do it today. If you don't want to, you can mail it back in. But if you do it today, we can save our 42 cents. Okay. The evaluation is confidential, and the responses will be compiled at the next governance meeting to be held in September. I ask that each of you complete the evaluation confidentially and mail it or give it to us in the office. Before we begin, I request that any individual in the audience who is asked to address the board do so from the podium. Additionally, prior to concluding the meeting, members of the audience will have an opportunity to address the board on matters that are discussed today. We will begin today's meeting by reading the roll. Chair Olson is excused. Secretary Floss is here. Vice Chair Jursak?
Present.
Okay. Director Sanfilippo?
Here.
Mayor Brown?
Present.
County Executive Pogancars?
Present.
Okay. All right. We have a quorum. Okay. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our special meeting held on June 8th, 2021, and the regular board meeting held on June 21st, 2021. Directors will find a draft of those minutes and the accompanying draft resolution in your board book under tab 2. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, second? I'll give you a second to look over it. Are there any changes, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Thank you. Which side did you aye? And approve or not approve?
Sorry, approve.
Okay, there's a delay, so I'll be a
Little
little
lag
bit more
there.
careful.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I got it. So thank you very much. So the minutes are approved. I'm going to reorder the agenda under district items. We will now review the 2 labor agreements between Buffalo City School District and the Buffalo Association of Substitute Administrators. Following this, we will consider the superintendent's request for an extension to submit the revised financial plan. BFSA staff reports on these 2 items along with the district superintendent's submission, including the financial analysis and a letter addressing the funding sources for such contracts. And they have been provided under tab 3 in your book. Jeanette, Nathan, will you discuss the labor agreement?
Good afternoon. The first contract we'll take a look at is the collective bargaining agreement between Buffalo City School District and the BASA, the Buffalo Administrative Association of Substitute Administrators. So the BASA covers all persons employed by the school district as per diem substitute administrators. Currently, there's 26 former district teachers and or administrators that are part of that union. The 21-22 budget would include 20 part-time employees. These employees don't receive health insurance through the union. They receive it for the terms of the agreement that they retired under, so either the administrative union or the teachers union. This is a brand new collective bargaining unit. It was previously represented by the Buffalo Council of Supervisors and Administrators. The BCSA had a CBA which was approved back in September of 2017, expired in 2020. This did not include increases for the substitute administrators. This new contract would be effective at the time of ratification through June 30th, 2023. It's because it's a new union and new contract. This CBA, the successor agreement, includes all of the terms for the union. And the Board of Education is expected to consider this, approving this contract on August 18th, 2021. A few of the main terms of the contract. Substitute administrators have had 2 MOUs over the last 20 years, which have impacted per diem. Back in August of 2004, the per diem rates were set at $175 for assistant principal substitutes and $200 a day per diem for principal substitutes. A 2011 MOU eliminated the $200 per diem, and so this new agreement would be the first increase since the 2009. Pointing that out, that all substitute administrators now get the same per diem, whether they're principal substitutes or assistant principal substitutes. The increase from 2004 to the ratification is just about 23%, and over the next year, from 21 to 22, the increase would be an additional 2.3%. The second large feature of the contract is that there's a new incentive bonus for employees. Employees who work at least 50 days within a semester, which is September to January or February to June, would be compensated with an additional $1,000 per semester stipend. You get 2 stipends in a school year, so up to $2,000 per substitute administrator. And then one caveat is that because they're many of them are former teachers as well, they work as a substitute teacher, it does not count towards this specific incentive.
Nathan, I have a question. Does that impact their pensions if they're receiving TRS pensions or not? Okay, thank you.
The BASA labor agreement net costs, we broke it down by all funds and general fund. The general fund cost is essentially 95% of the all funds cost. 5% of it is assumed to be grant funded. This contract would cost, in the current fiscal year, $205,000 for the general fund and about $216,000 all funds. Over the financial plan, the estimated impact is about $887,000 general fund and $933,000 all funds. There aren't any cost-saving measures associated with this new contract. And then, of course, the district has identified sufficient funding to address the increase in labor costs. This will review along with the TAB funding mechanism as well. This just gives a breakdown of how we examined all of the net costs and where those numbers came from. The incentive bonus, the increase per diem, the impact on FICA, and then the lower table. It's just the same as the top table, discounted by 95%. Yeah, thanks. There's no,
How many substitutes do they use a year? Does it vary widely, or is this a fairly constant dollar amount for their budget?
it's about 20 per year. It really matters the number of hours that they would.
Mm.
And that's if they had full employment the whole time.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, it was disrupted by COVID. There wasn't as much of a need for it last year.
Right. Okay.
The second labor contract that we have is between the Buffalo City School District and the Transportation Aides of Buffalo. This is an existing labor unit and a CBA which recently expired back in June, February of 2021. This new labor agreement would be effective all the way through June 30th of 2024. It covers all employees currently serving as part-time bus aides for the school district. 227 of them currently. The district hopes to get the number up to about 370 by the start of the school year. That's the ideal level that they're looking for. So there's a little bit of makeup to be made there. Just like the BFSA, this unit is about 95% funded through the general fund. So 5% of the total cost is funded through grants. Because about half of the employees provide special education services, there's a reimbursement in the next year's New York State Transportation Aid. So about 43.5% of the total TAB personnel costs are reimbursed in the form of New York State aid the following year. And then again, the school district is expected to consider this coming up next week, I think.
So Nathan, is the 370 including any adjustments for COVID and COVID-related distancing and more buses, or is this what they're expecting to go forward?
That's the hypothetical or theoretical they want to get up to. All of those measures will be in place. But I don't know that it would be more so if they had a traditional busing model versus spacing needs and distancing needs. So it's more based on the total number of work hours that they anticipate them working.
Sure, but there would be more if all of a sudden we have COVID restrictions, right? I was just wondering if they had that included in this year's upcoming budget or not.
Yeah, it isn't based on that.
Okay.
Based on tradition.
Okay.
We're having a hard time getting up to the 370.
Yeah.
So in a standard year, how many did they use?
It
Pre-COVID.
fluctuates. It's been as high as 600 some years. Very low last year because there was nowhere near the need for it. And employees are either in two groups, either they've been there for many years or there's a lot of turnover, step one and step two.
And so, Nathan, you just mentioned it, but just a little bit of elaboration. Fiscal 1920, you said a few worked?
In the last school year, they had less than 227. It fluctuates throughout the school year, but that number, 227, is as high as it's been over the last year.
Maybe I didn't ask. I'm sorry, I didn't. My question wasn't properly formulated. Actually, I think that the question is better postponed. Of the district, Mr. Pritchard's on the line, I think. The district posted a surplus for fiscal 1920. Most of that surplus was generated by what?
Transportation costs is a big portion of it.
But that's transportation per se. is that sort of that's not general fund, that's, much of that is reimbursed.
The following year. So yeah, there can be a 1 year, there's a 1 year lag on reimbursement.
Mhm.
So not using them during COVID will affect the following fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
But now we have a
right, so-
lower.
Right, there's a blip correspondingly at, not there and then shows up later on.
Do we have a dollar amount associated with that savings?
I do. There was about, I think it was estimated to be about just shy of $60 million. Last year in the adopted budget, it was about half that, 29. So the deficit in 21-22 is really just the lag from all the transportation savings set aside in
Right.
to the current year.
But again, Jen, I think you spoke to the heart of my question. The surplus now recorded for 2021. Most of the surplus was generated how?
Going back to the third quarter report, because they haven't released the numbers yet, but the third quarter report generated a significant amount of savings due to transportation.
Right.
Which is going to roll forward into use next year because,
Right.
the aid will
Right.
be accounted for. That was the significant fluctuation, if I remember correctly, Nathan.
There were lots of moving pieces, but that is probably the
That's the
largest
biggest chunk of the saving that generated
Right.
the black ink.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we'll be coming
That's
back
just on the
to,
expense side. We haven't even seen on the revenue side what, the increases in revenue from whether it was sales tax or state aid or anything. I mean, those are all components to the surplus too. Right. At the end of the year.
right,
Yeah, when they just closed.
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Yep, we definitely expect a surplus in the sales tax side of it.
Mhm.
And from the third quarter projections, our internal numbers were higher than that, so absolutely.
Job vacancies, I mean, there's a whole host of,
Substitutes.
But there was more
that will all
churn,
contribute to whatever their surplus ends up being.
unfilled positions, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Jeff, would you like to say anything for the school district?
Yeah, hi, everybody. So I've been listening, and there are a lot of factors that that will play into our projected surplus for the full year 2021. I don't have that projected yet because we're still working on it. But just to kind of clarify, so everyone is clear, when we did issue our March 31st quarterly report, we had an overall projected savings on expenditure side for our budget of about $71.5 million. 29 million of that was transportation contracts. And then another 2.5 million was transportation aids. So the aids, the tab union, that was another 2.5 million. So that's roughly, not quite, but roughly half of the expenditure, positive variance is related to transportation.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to say about the two contracts? Jeff?
I'm sorry, me?
Yes.
No, I think everything, I think everything that we have to say as a district is really contained in the documents that were submitted. I know for both of them, we budget conservatively, and I think in the documents we submitted, especially for the bus aids, it kind of showed that we planned for sort of an expectation that we were going to settle this contract. So our budget for the 21-22 year really almost basically, I think, covers effectively what we're going to spend on this contract. And then the aids and assist, or the the Basa contract, similar, just because of the scale of that, we really have accounted for that within our overall budget. So, I feel from a fiscal perspective, very confident in these two contracts from that perspective.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Do you have anything else, Nathan?
Sure. Well, I can get a few more terms and then just a breakout of the funding.
Okay.
Briefly mentioned. I did want to point out that the $71 million surplus, that's a budget surplus. This is working now.
Ethan, you mean general fund?
Not an actual surplus, but based on budget.
Okay, all right, got you. Yes, got it. Got it.
Bryce, would you mind letting me out here? So honestly, I can continue. That's showing right up there. Well, I can go along with the slides if you could try to get it to work for the audience. I can skip ahead the slides.
Yes, that would be good.
So the next slide is shows the wage increases. There's the current CBA's 4 steps with the successor agreements, 3 steps. And essentially what's happened here is that step 1 and 2 of the current contract is consolidated to one of the new one. That's year 1 through 4 of the existing step. There's an effective rate of increase for step 1 and 2 into the new step, which is 14%, and then 6.7 and 6.8% from step 2, 3, and 4. And once the successor agreement would become effective, there's now 3 steps, and the annual increases over the life of this new contract range anywhere from 5 to 6.3% final 2 years. Thank you, Grace. And then there's a new incentive bonus associated with TAB successor agreement. This is a one-time $100 incentive for employees who work all 60 days of the 2021 summer school program. This incentive goes along with some existing incentives that are within the current contract. Just shows that the steps can be adjusted, going from a 4-step contract to a 3-step contract. That specific language is not in the successor agreement, and BFSA recommends that new language be updated in the successor agreement to reflect this. The district did confirm that isn't shown on the screen here. Is how incentives are going forward. The net cost of the TAB labor agreement in the current fiscal year would be $374,000 on a general fund basis, $734,000 on a general fund basis, and $773,000 on an all funds basis. The impact of the financial plan is about $3.5 million general fund and about $3.7 million all funds. Then, as we mentioned earlier, there is a partial reimbursement through New York State Transportation Aid. When you factor this in, there's about a $1.56 million, what's called savings, additional revenue, which would be available, the impact from the increased costs. So it does discount the increased costs by that amount.
So the net number is about half of the 3.6.
The net number is, this slide here factors that in, less the New York State Transportation. So I didn't separate it on the previous slide.
Okay.
But it is factored in this table. And And just briefly here, we have 3 labor contracts that have been approved since start of the fiscal year. The first was reviewed at the previous board meeting. That's the contract with Best. Now we have 2 additional ones here with Basa and TAP. So the question that we had was, what are the funding mechanisms? So back on June 19th, BFSA reviewed the successor agreement with Best, and then back on July 16th, a letter was submitted to BFSA which identified the funding to address the cumulative impact of not just that contract, but the 2 additional ones that have been submitted. The adopted budget and the financial plan themselves have not been adjusted yet to reflect the savings. So there is a lot going on, so that this table summarizes all the net costs on top of the Best contract, the TAP contract, Basa. So the 3 contracts combined current fiscal year net cost is about $3.8 million. Overall, in the financial plan, it's about $26.9 million. And then we have certain amounts that were built into the adopted budget and financial plan, which are available to fund the contract. So including that, district funding would have to be from either projected surpluses within the financial plan, the financial plan's contingency reserve, and or fund balance. And so the first draw beyond what's already built into the financial plan is line 4 here, the projected surpluses. There's a $6.5 million surplus projected in 22-23, much larger surplus, about 19.9 million. And then year 4, it's much smaller. That's the entirety of the projected 4th year of surplus. So after the draw on that, year 2 and 3 are fully funded, including the amounts already included in the financial plan. Year 4 would require additional funding, which would be $3 million from this reserve contingency. And then after that is where the draw on fund balance for contracts would kick in. So there's a lot going on that slide, but essentially year 1 through 3, it's funded through what's already built into the financial plan, and then projected surpluses. And then year 4 has to draw on the contingency reserve and fund balance to balance out.
Nathan, where's the asterisk on this chart here? The adjustment for state transportation aid.
Right. So
Am I missing it somewhere?
there's the asterisk there,
There it is, okay.
and then it just shows that we're factoring in on top of what was provided from the letter to us.
On year 3, in adopted financial plan projected surpluses,
Mm-hmm.
how much did you say they had?
So this is not the entirety of it. This is just the funding that we would draw on those surpluses. But the financial plan has 6.5 million here, 19.9 million here, and then about 900, or exactly that amount in year 4.
Do they anticipate using the full 19 in year 3?
No, right now the draw would be just a balance.
6 million, okay. Okay.
Any other questions?
I had a couple
Yes.
comments, if that's okay. Just to kind of summarize the high-level points of what Nathan discussed, the agreement with the substitute administrators is pretty straightforward. These employees, they don't receive health insurance as they're retired. They don't receive pension, as you mentioned before. The agreement does increase the per diem rate for the first time since 2004. The last contract with the administrators, these employees used to be grouped into the administrators union group, and they didn't receive a raise with the last collective bargaining that occurred. So they were broken out into their own separate group, and that's why there's a new group here. The contract with the bus aides is timely. It just recently expired on June 30th, so this brings them right up to date. Wage increases are provided in addition to a consolidation of steps for this group. So there's an extension of the amount of time for an employee to advance from step 1 to step 2 as compared to the prior agreement, and that's for transportation aids. Thank you. The district has demonstrated the ability to pay for the 3 recently settled labor contracts. The letter from the superintendent does expand on other funding sources that could be available for future contracts. But what I did just want to point out in year 4, and that's important to designate that it's year 4 of the financial plan, so it's out there. But as we see the federal stimulus dropping off from being available the year before, there's a reliance on fund balance to fund these contracts in year 4. And the use of fund balance obviously is unsustainable. It's a one-time, non-recurring source. So our recommendation is to note that, this amount is not significant to the district in totality, but it should be considered and taken into consideration for future contract negotiations, as you can kind of see the pressure starting to be on year 4. There is additional surpluses available, as you pointed out, in year 3. So there's kind of a lot of convergence of different things going on, but, the use of fund balance is something to consider for future negotiations. And then just a recommendation in the report that you're going to be asked to approve is that the language be clarified in the transportation aids contract with respect to aligning the perfect incentive bonus with the new step structure. It's a minor change. It doesn't change the basis of the contract. It just cleans it up. And then the final item is to recommend that BFSA Board of Directors require a modified financial plan that includes the financial impact from the 2 labor agreements as reviewed today. The district has already agreed to that. It's more a dot the I, cross the T. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the BFSA report with the recommendations as discussed, and for such reports to be submitted to the Buffalo Board of Education for their consideration?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, we can move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I'm taking that as the delayed yes. Okay. Our next item of district business is to review and consider a request by the superintendent to extend the date of the submission of the modified financial plan to the BFSA till November 30th of this year. A copy of the request is provided under tab 3 of your board book. On June 21st, 2021, BFSA passed a resolution requiring the submission of a revised financial plan for the financial impact of the then proposed labor agreements with the Buffalo Education Support Team, BEST. The reason, as outlined in the superintendent's letter, includes the fact that additional labor agreements were then anticipated, the continued uncertainty regarding the status of Westminster Community Charter School and Enterprise Charter School, and the continued revisions to planned spending of the federal stimulus awards. The late date of November will provide the district with sufficient time to address these outstanding items. I would accept a motion to approve the superintendent's request and extend the deadline to November 30th. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay. Yes, I'm getting there. Okay.
We didn't have to vote on that, right?
Well, we will in a second.
Okay.
I just want to note that the plan is to include the financial impact
Okay.
and further note that the extension may be null if a significant financial event occurs before that date.
Okay.
For the record. So,
Okay.
all those in favor, say aye.
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 We got it. Opposed, no. Okay, the motion passes.
Jeanette, do we have to, we are compelled to, when requesting a revised financial plan, if we extend, if we offer an extension, aren't we bound sooner to report to Albany?
There's no requirement to report to Albany if we extend.
Oh, okay, all right,
We report, correct.
okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Okay. So moving on to our next item, the Governance Committee met earlier today and is recommending the full board approval of various guidelines, policies, and reports. We're being asked to ratify the committee's decision. I would like to take them all in one action. The policies and guidelines have been provided under tab 1, with the various draft resolutions provided separately under tab 4. The policies include the bylaws of the BFSA, the Code of Ethics, the mission statement, the investment guidelines, the property disposal guidelines, the use of discretionary funds policy, the whistleblower policy, the lobby policy, procurement guidelines, the prompt payment policy, the annual procurement report, and the annual prompt payment report, the conflict of interest report, and I think that's all of them. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution? Okay, second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Because we had our discussion in committee, and I think almost everyone was here. Great. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. This concludes the business portion of our meeting as included on our agenda. Are there any new business matters to be discussed? If not, I would like to open the floor to the public for our comment period. Does anyone like to make a comment from the audience? If not, from the control board, Jeff, I'd like to thank you for coming in and working with us today. I know how hard this has all been, trying to put everything together, and we appreciate your time. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.